I'm
I think he dropped out.
okay.
Are we
Okay.
going to be
All
like
right.
this?
Okay. All right. Okay. Uh, Good afternoon, everyone, and I hope you're all having a wonderful midweek. It's just always a good time to take a check-in. My name is Swarnima. I'm the co-founder and chief product officer at Gayatri, a women's health platform where we love talking about women's health, and more importantly, what we like to do is to get women to invest and reinvest in their health. Because, like they say, that women's health is not just about healthcare and clinical health issues, but it's about overall well-being. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about with two very special people here. We've got Mythreyee Ramesh from the Quint and Navneet Kaur, who is from Femtech India. And I will just get to them and allow them to introduce themselves in a minute. But the topic at hand over here today is journalism and women's health. So we're going to talk about a bunch of things today, but basically talking about the creation of healthcare content. So when we are talking about creating healthcare content, that's across the board. There are people who are creating content, whether it is for clinical trials or for research purposes or for purposes of consumption of healthcare practitioners and policy. But we also have started seeing a huge influx of content in the digital space. There are influencers speaking on Instagram. There are doctors speaking on Instagram and various other platforms, and people are consuming that content very robustly. What we're going to do today is break down the pros and cons of it, the myth from the fact. How do we be mindful while creating this content? Who do we aim it at? What are the regulations, and how does this content affect public policy? So, a warm welcome once again to Mythreyee and Navneet. And I'd like for you to guys just introduce yourselves quickly, and then we'll go into a round of questions. Mythreyee, why don't you start?
Yeah. So, hi everyone. It's been a pleasure to be a part of this panel. I'm a multimedia journalist and I have over 5 years of experience now. I cover various beats, but my priority has been always the intersection of gender and health and how it impacts almost all walks of our life. And I report, I produce, and I also make short videos. So we try to put out as much content in as many formats as possible. So very much looking forward to the chat today with both Navneet and Swarnima.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you so much for joining once again, Maitri. And it's always wonderful to see, more and more, young women driving the agenda in the newsroom and really taking, making health the center stage, right? Navneet, we'd love to hear a little bit more about you.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. Um, my name is Navneet Kaur. I'm based in Bangalore. I'm a founder of Femtech India. Femtech India is India's leading platform for innovation and collaboration in Femtech space. We launched in September 2022, and as of now, we are India's leading platform for network of founders, individual professionals, and investors in making of hub of innovation, collaboration, and community building in femtech and women's health space. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation today, and yeah, ready to start. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the reasons why we also, love the conversations at Femtech India is because it's really spotlighting women leading the charge for women's health, and which is such an important conversation to drive today. So, Maitri, let me start with you. Uh, Especially in the light of COVID, right? I mean, where we saw there was a lot of, there was just so much. We also called it the infodemic, right, along with the pandemic. So there was a lot of conversation that was going on online, and there was so much. We already know that health is one of the things where there is so much myth that goes. There's a lot of fake news that goes into health content. So what is why does India need health journalism, especially learning from our COVID experience?
So I think you're absolutely right. COVID was definitely a defining moment, I might say, for health journalism in India, because I think until then, India had not seen, for prolonged period of times, be it the legacy media or the new media or television or magazine, anywhere, all conversations centered around the pandemic, and rightly so, but also, related topics of health. So this was the first time that you were seeing such discussions happen on the front page, and even on prime time. And actually, Swarnima, I was reading an article yesterday about reporting during COVID, and somebody had rightly put it, saying, why doing health journalism at the time of a pandemic was almost like building a plane while also trying to fly it.
Yeah.
So I think that
True.
nobody could have put it in a better way, because science kept evolving every day, and then there was human faces of tragedy, and really stark numbers that needed to be reported on. So I think this was the time when health journalists also started looking into how to report and how to get the information across, which I think is more important, a little bit more closely. And to be very honest, I think COVID has altered all our lives in
Yeah.
some way or the other. And
Correct.
because of this, what we are seeing now is also a huge surge of interest in topics related to health, to fitness, to nutrition. People want to know about communicable diseases, which might not have been of a great interest, say, pre-pandemic. They want to know how non-communicable diseases, like, say, something even like a diabetes, is affecting their day-to-day life. So this is something that we have seen in audiences as well. They genuinely want to know these things. And I think COVID also made newsrooms realize that you cannot really separate health from other topics, right? Like, because I think, like, health is connected to politics, it is connected to education, and it is very much connected to to gender, and how, like, half the population in the country live. So I think the pandemic has definitely redefined how we look at health journalism. And I would just like to broadly sort of classify this into 4 points. I think, like you mentioned, health literacy has become so important. Like, people want to know about things, they want to know what difference does a health insurance make for a woman, for example. Like, it's not necessarily uh, you know health journalism is no longer just these many cases were recorded, or it's not just like, this amazing surgery was performed in this hospital. It's much more than that. People want to know, like, about various aspects of health. And another thing, I think the most important thing is also, as journalists, and one of the key focus areas, also preventing misinformation. I cannot tell you how many WhatsApp forwards we get, or how many things that people believe to be true when it has, like, absolutely no scientific backing. So that is another thing that is very much needed, and that is something that health journalists are focusing on and should be focusing on. Another reason why we definitely need health journalism is also, it really empowers patients. I feel we play such a huge role in sort of letting patients know what are their rights, what could happen, what would happen. So I feel helps them make better informed decisions, and also they can engage in better discussions with their healthcare providers, which I think is a key role that we play.
Absolutely. That's
And
very
lastly, why we need it is because there is such inequality in access to healthcare itself. And I
true.
feel journalists play a very important role in bringing to light these inequalities. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I definitely feel India needs so much more focus on health journalism now than ever before.
Yeah, no, I think you really sort of summarize it really well, and this is a good time to pivot into, the work, that massive work that Navneet is doing, where we're really talking about, you're creating content, you're pulling data, all the things that you mentioned, Maitri, in terms of literacy, in terms of human stories, in terms of the numbers and the research. I think Navneet, I would love for you to talk a little bit about how you're sort of doing that, and also the importance of creating this content from a women's health perspective, and from a gendered perspective, rather, not just women's health, gendered perspective, and how sort of that experience has panned out, and what's the importance of this as we go.
No, absolutely. See, women health content is very crucial because it's directly addressing the unique and diverse health needs for women, right? So the information covers a wide range of topics from reproductive health through menstrual health, pregnancy, menopause, and other various gender perspective, different health concerns. So women experience so many different hormonal changes. I think I also talk this a lot in my podcast, and I think we all are, what we're trying to do is to really try to put the content right out there so women can really find a solution, and that can also happen through empowered content. So coming back to that, hormonal changes in women's health, they go through like from menstruation to menopause to pregnancy, and this information should be guidance so it can empower women, more women, to navigate and go through these phases with a greater understanding and confidence, right? So secondly, I also feel that women health extends beyond reproductive matters, because that's what I would say, or media, or the content are playing a huge role, because there's a wide range of conditions and concern that affect women overall throughout the life. So topics like maybe cardiovascular health, osteoporosis, breast ovarian cancer, mental health concern, autoimmune disorders, right? So these topics are still not discussed so widely. So I think the content creation at somewhere, it's of course bridging the gap, and slowly, apart from just reproductive health, but slowly also opening up conversations about other women health matters. But when we come back to the content part of it, right? So the content plays a huge role, as I said, because it's providing actionable insights and guidance to women, right? Through the content which empowers to make them informed choices about their overall health, and also not just that, but seek timely medical care, so women can also adapt healthy lifestyle choices. And I think that really plays overall like important aspects of women's health. And also I feel the contents are also bridging the knowledge gap, right? There are so many myths
Absolutely.
about women's health, right? So
Mhm.
how do you promote open discussions around sensitive
Mhm.
subjects, right? So ultimately women health content play a practical role in promoting optimal healthcare, and also enhancing overall quality of life for women. And I think which is very very important. And at Femtech India, I think that's what we believe in, and that's what we try to do, that is bringing awareness to all different health concerns, different topics, but also empowering more women to take informed choices, which is again in another way of empowering women, why women's health matters.
Yeah. I think Navneet and Maitri, one of the things that you've raised basically in summary is that we are basically waking up to the fact in the last few years where we're talking about, there are two things that we're noticing. There is obviously a very accelerated adoption of digital health, and secondly there is an accelerated consumption of digital health content, and I think what you're both trying to touch upon, and which is something very important, is that this content and the consumption of it signals various things. One, it signals that people are actively seeking this content for better health outcomes, and the second is that these consumption patterns, this content consumption pattern is also shaping real policy at the level of pharmaceuticals, at the level of workplaces, and also, it's shaping businesses. It's highlighting the gaps that need to be fulfilled. It's highlighting the unmet needs that are there, and that's one of the reasons why Gayatri also exists, because we've been there's been so much content out there about women's health, and the next question then comes, okay, now what do we do about it? Where do we go next, now that we know that we have this health need? So Maitri, I'll quickly come to you, that can you touch a little bit upon this, because you spoke a lot about the use of data, health literacy, etc. In what ways does health journalism today very robustly shape public health policy? And because of the engagement that we're seeing with this kind of content, so is what's the role that it directly plays? What is the role it should play? In sort of framing the wider policy that we have today?
Yeah, so like you rightly mentioned, journalism does play a huge role in sort of bringing spotlight to the shortcomings in the healthcare system. And in lots of ways, it does drive policy changes and resource allocation, most importantly, and also policies which directly focus on healthcare access. For example, I'm not sure, before if there was this level of information dissemination about, say, HPV vaccine, even like a couple of years ago. And I think,
Yeah,
it's
that's
all
right.
a little
Hmm.
interrelated. Now you see more and more conversation about HPV. You see more and more women on your timelines, taking the vaccine, posting about it. And this is also related to a lot of content out there. News organizations are covering, what is the government policy on HPV vaccine, what are the private players who are coming up with a new vaccine, how much do the imported vaccines cost. So I think in a way, this surge that we are seeing in conversation is also because of a very if I may say, a very thought out media push, I
Hmm.
mean, by
Hmm.
various stakeholders maybe, but in a way it has impacted the policy, it is impacting lives of women.
Yeah.
And governments are starting to take notice of it now. If you see, there are certain governments that are sort of even moving ahead to include the HPV vaccine for girls between 9 to 14 in their
Hmm.
immunization
Hmm. Hmm.
lists. So I think this is the kind of change that we are seeing. Another thing which is, related to the anemia, related to women's health, is I think the whole data on anemia and how it impacts women, especially women in their reproductive age. Again, this is something that has been constantly reported on. And then you are seeing how certain policies are being adopted, are being dropped off. Both, it works both ways. But what how it is impacting the nutrition that is being given in, like, say, midday meals. So I think all this is a very connected effort. And the media, of course, has a large role to sort of like play with this. Another one is, recently the NFHS data, there is going to
Hmm.
be certain things that are, reportedly going to be dropped off the
Yeah, that's
NFHS 6. And
hmm.
the media has been reporting, at least certain sections of the media has been reporting on how dropping disability data could, affect, the policy, could affect how lives of people who live with disabilities are impacted. Now,
Hmm.
whether this will lead to a policy change or not, one can never say. But the fact is that at least these issues are being brought to light. And I think health journalists play a very crucial role in this.
That's right. I think the few examples that you brought up, Mythreyee, including anemia, the HPV vaccine, and also the sections of the NFHS data that are, sort of
Yeah,
alleged,
yeah,
they are about to be sort of chopped off. I think it has a very clear implication, and it has a very clear gendered implication, right? So I want
absolutely.
to, go to Navneet and, really talk about this one very crucial element, which is women consuming healthcare content. I think one of the things that we are always talking about, whether it is women led media or women oriented healthcare initiatives, etc., or anything that is, related to gender and things like that, we're always talking about the financial and economic underpinnings of this. We are talking about financial viability. We are talking about scale and things like that. So I want to understand from you a little bit about consumption patterns, of healthcare content by women, and how that has changed over the years, how that is showing a huge upward tick over the years, and what are the positive impacts, or consequences from the perspective of industry, etc., as a result of this. You're on mute. You're on mute, Navneet.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Can you hear me
Yeah,
now?
yeah, we can hear. Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned in my previous answer as well, that women plays a crucial role both in consumer and contributor to healthcare, which is information influencing the industry in various ways. So, firstly, women consume a high level of content engagement with typically in healthcare platform as well, right? So they're more likely to seek information outside related to wellness, preventive care, or even maternal health and general medical advice that we usually go on internet and try to seek our advice. That even I do that. I'm sure a lot many women do that, right? So also that women are more than active and contribute to healthcare discussion, that is content creation, like how we seeing the trend as Instagram, or globally how the TikTok and the blogs and other part of podcast or YouTube channels, how they're empowering like more open dialogue about women's health. And there are discussions has been more open than ever comparatively before, because one is women are accepting, okay, these problem exist, and second, they're willing to talk about it, which is really good. It's also again comes back to empowering more women to making more informed choices, right? Another way is women are also actively contributing, when we say rise of platform, that social media again, it has provided a huge space for women to share their health journeys, like which is again story sharing, exchange advice, even challenging the traditional myths, right? So that is really content creation, and the social media platforms are bridging the gap in the overall empowering women's health, right? So the grassroots approach has led to diversification and enrichment of healthcare content, right? Which is again a personal stories, as I said. So it's again, it goes to beyond personal story, but medical, broader medical discourse inspiring. How is it affecting in a positive way that women are better equipped to advocate for their own health needs, right? So again, not just for their own health needs but also for the families, right? Because
Hmm.
the women are primary, they decide for the family health care, they decide, they are the decision makers basically, even in consumer patterns, as I just mentioned earlier. So this empowerment has fostered a collaborative relationship between women and healthcare professional, and that also leading into more patient centric care, which is shared and decision making, because personalized solutions, that which is femtech is really bridging that gap. And it's all about making more personalized for women, and that's also happening through because of great content creation, because as I said, women are more than willing to speak about it. And also when we look at not just healthcare professionals, they also understanding that women need more personalized care, right? So which is again leading to of more positive impact of bridging the women's health gap, which was very underserved, but also making it more personalized for women, so they feel more discreet way, or other way of seeking professional help, right? So again, I would say like having having choice about making certain choices for your health is a basic human right. And I think women are more than empowered to do that now, through all the empowerment happening through content creation or social media channels. So I think the recognizing the insights and gain from the women's health involvement in healthcare industry and the content, I think it is very essential for overall healthcare outcome and also promoting women's well-being overall.
Well, that's extremely important. I think, Avneet, you really sort of, laid out the whole landscape of, how women are creating an industry which is very led by content. I think that is something that we have already seen at Gayatri, because, we are learning so much, from She the People and things like that. Is that a lot of the, economy around women's health that is being, created and fueled, a lot of it began primarily with a very differentiated approach at seeking awareness. It was not enough to just start Googling things, although, of course, internet searches and self medication and these kinds of behaviors obviously still exist like very, very widely. But there is enough change that one is seeing in the information seeking behavior and health
Yeah.
seeking behavior, which is fueling this new sort of economy. So, since we're talking about women writers and women writing things, and I was just reflecting earlier this morning that there is a lot of authorship that has happened in out in the West about personal narratives of women's health. which is something that is still stigmatized in India. To quite, of course, these digital platforms are really breaking down that stigma to a very huge extent. A lot of people are talking about body image and sort of connecting that to health issues, quite a lot in India as well. But authorship around women's health, which is um, a mixture of oral history, but also clinical sort of background. That is something that is yet to take like sort of take off in India. Um, so I just want to get some concluding sort of comments from the both of you, starting with you, Maitri, that when it comes to women's authorship for healthcare, how do you see the future of that to be? And when I means when I say female authorship, I mean the centrality of women in taking ownership or telling
Of their
the healthcare story of India, the healthcare landscape story of India. So just wanted your thoughts on that.
So, I think you use the absolutely right word, which is like stigma. We reach out to a lot of people to carry, their personal blogs, their personal, like, narratives, just something, something as simple as how, doing a morning run every day on the same route could be
Mm.
a very, could have a
Yeah.
very different impact for a woman than it does for a man. And while people are still very slightly more comfortable writing about it, we've also seen much more hesitancy in talking about such things on, say, video, which would also mean that these things travel a little bit faster, but then
Mhm.
they're also putting themselves out there, and it's really not a kind world to sort of reciprocate and to take. So I think there is a lot of stigma still, there is a lot of hesitancy in women, to women, to tell their own stories. But let me tell you, it's really changing. I feel like women are more open now than ever to sort of talk about topics like something like breastfeeding, which would not really have so many narratives. This breastfeeding week, we had so many people writing to us and telling we want to tell our own story, which I found very refreshing. And so I think, yeah, I think we have very exciting times ahead, as many people as there are to sort of throw something at women or to troll women who are telling their story. There are also women who just don't care about it, and they just want their story to be out there. So I think a little bit of trust on both the organization that is reaching out to sort of put these stories out and the women who are telling these stories. I think we are going to see a time when there is actually going to be a boom of women telling more of their stories.
No, that is, I think, both the things that you talked about, that how there is a hesitation because women telling stories has more ramifications, social and cultural, than we normally imagine. Storytelling also carries with so many layers. Just like we've been talking, I think after the whole case of Jyoti Singh, the Nirbhaya case, we were talking about women occupying the public space more and what are the dynamics of it. And the same goes to, owning stories in the online space as well, in the digital space as well. And what are the nuances of existing in the digital space with personal stories. And I think it's a good time to sort of, take Navneet's thoughts on this because you yourself, Navneet, speaking of authorship, you yourself are kind of, talking, bringing the intersection of data, finance and, females, sort of female oral history onto the public platform. So, what are your thoughts on how this trend will go forward?
Yeah, so actually, as I mentioned, that women are caregivers and decision maker for many household, right? So that one, they plays central role in managing family health overall. So represented matters not only just in policy making but also inspiring future generation. I'd say, when young women are seeing that the women are more than willing to talk about it. So it's just that it's also empowered them that hey, women's health is not taboo. It's just that we need to break the old patterns. And what I've also realized is how we have another stories. There are so many social media platforms where they discuss, women, why there are only stories about women, when in leadership or women achieving great things or women doing certain things in different fields, right? But when it comes to healthcare, there's a still huge stigma because I've also I myself I host a lot of offline events, and I've always realized that when we try to say we want to record anyone's personal story about healthcare, they're not willing to speak about it. So,
Mm.
and I think that, as I said, the representation really matters, because then is just we making like very supportive society for all the women, that hey, you are not alone who's going through it. So that plays a very very crucial role, because the stories also really empathize that it's like bridging the gap, and also bringing the support for everyone, right? So that's definitely going to take some more time, because as I said, women are more than accepting to take more informed choices, but when it comes to story and representation, they're still a little hesitant to probably tell on social platform, or probably speak up about, okay, this is what I have faced. Like, just very small example of, nobody really talks about miscarriages, and I think that's a very painful process, and not just body wise, but women go through mentally also so much, right? So it's, again, we live in very cultured society, so the culture aspects also play a huge role in terms of digital health and modern society we building in, when we talk about women's health overall. So I would again empathize on the stories, and ultimately empowering more women to share their perspective can lead to more responsive, effective, and healthcare ecosystem for all of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, thank you so much, Navneet, for that, and also Maitri. I think one of the key takeaways that I would, if I were to frame that, would basically be that, firstly, when it comes to health content, you know, when we think of content these days, I think content has just become so much more to digital content and things. But I think there is a lot of simplified and public friendly ways in which policy related content is being disseminated on the digital space, and more and more people are, I think, civic engagement with healthcare content. I more than calling it content consumption, I think what I like to call it is civic engagement with healthcare content, which is becoming a bridge between people and the end user, or the end patient and the healthcare practitioner, or the healthcare policy maker, or people who are sort of like really framing the healthcare agenda of the country in various ways. And I think what is my key takeaway from here, and I'm sure this is for everyone who's engaging right now, is that this the women's voices and the gendered perspective on it is changing the game in a very big way. And since then, of course, it matters because we're talking about the Women Writers Fest. But I think the the other end of the women writers are the people who are consuming it. And there are more and more women in their own niches really sort of coming up with a cacophony of voices for health, and it's changing the game in every which way, whether it's policy or business or whatever. So thank you so much, Navneet and Maitri. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I mean, all the best for all that you're doing in your respective spaces. It's game changing in its own way, and we hope to keep in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
having us. Bye.
Okay,
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.